If your life felt harder than others, it's not because you're weak. It's because darkness recognized your destiny before you did. There are moments in life when you feel the pressure without seeing the source, when resistance rises the moment you decide to grow, when confusion, delay, and silent opposition appear just as you step closer to your calling. Your heart senses it before your mind understands it. You wonder why your path has never been ordinary, why your battles are deeper, and why ease seems to visit others, but challenge keeps knocking at your door. This is not coincidence. This is not bad luck. This is not because you are weak. It is because you are chosen. From the very beginning, your life has carried a weight of purpose, and wherever purpose exists, opposition follows. Darkness does not waste energy on ordinary paths. It studies potential. It observes destiny. It recognizes impact long before the world does. And when it sees a life marked for influence, it begins to work in patterns, subtle, strategic, and often invisible to the untrained eye. Many chosen ones grow up feeling misunderstood, delayed, isolated, or constantly tested. Doors open and suddenly close. Relationships shift without explanation. Progress comes, then resistance rises stronger than before. These are not random events scattered through your life story. They are connected. There is a design behind the resistance, a rhythm behind the attacks, and a hidden pattern behind the darkness that tries to slow, distract, or derail those carrying uncommon assignment. What most people call struggle is actually a signal. What they label as failure is often a disguise, and what appears to be repeated hardship is frequently a carefully arranged attempt to keep you unaware of who you truly are. Darkness does not attack randomly, it follows patterns, and once those patterns are revealed, fear loses its power, confusion dissolves, and clarity rises. This message is not meant to alarm you, it is meant to awaken you. When you understand the pattern, you stop fighting blindly, you stop blaming yourself, you stop shrinking, you begin to move with awareness, intention, and inner authority. Knowledge becomes your shield, awareness becomes your strength, and clarity becomes the turning point between survival and dominion. Today, what was hidden will be exposed, what was confusing will become clear, and what once felt like relentless opposition will reveal itself as confirmation that your life carries uncommon value. 5 keynotes. Darkness recognizes destiny long before destiny recognizes itself, and that truth alone explains why your life has never followed an easy or predictable path. Before you ever understood who you were, before you could name your calling, before you had language for purpose, something unseen had already taken notice of you. Potential leaves a spiritual footprint. Purpose emits a signal. Even when you were young, uncertain, or unaware, there was already something different about the way life responded to you. You didn't have to announce your future for opposition to appear. You didn't have to succeed publicly to be resisted privately. The very seed of who you were becoming was enough. This is why many chosen ones experience pressure early. Childhood responsibility, emotional weight, sudden maturity, or environments that forced growth before innocence could fully rest. It wasn't because life was cruel. It was because destiny was present. Darkness studies trajectories. It does not wait for results. It reacts to potential. Just as a skilled strategist can look at raw material and see a masterpiece forming, opposition can look at an unfinished life and recognize future influence. That is why attacks often begin before understanding. The resistance you felt before clarity was not punishment, it was recognition. Many people assume attacks come after progress, but for the chosen, they often come before direction. Confusion shows up early, self-doubt whispers loudly, distractions appear at critical moments. You may have felt misplaced, misunderstood, or ahead of your time, yet behind in opportunity. This is one of the earliest signs that darkness has identified your destiny before you identified it yourself. When destiny is hidden, the attacks are subtle. When purpose is dormant, the opposition works quietly through discouragement, delay, and distortion of self-image. Darkness knows that if it can keep you unaware, it doesn't need to destroy you. Ignorance is cheaper than destruction. That's why so many chosen ones grow up questioning their worth instead of their assignment. The battle is not always to stop you, it is to slow your awakening. If you never realize who you are, you will never fully step into what you carry. And so the resistance focuses on identity long before it focuses on action. Think about how often your confidence was tested before your competence was even developed. How often your heart was wounded before your strength was revealed. How often you were told directly or indirectly to stay small, stay quiet, or stay realistic. Darkness tries to shape the inner narrative before the outer calling emerges. If it can convince you that you are ordinary, you will live beneath extraordinary potential. If it can persuade you that struggle is your identity, you will mistake resistance for destiny instead of recognizing it as confirmation. Destiny does not announce itself loudly at first. It whispers, it nudges, it pulls, and darkness listens carefully to those whispers. It observes patterns, your compassion, your sensitivity, your depth, your hunger for meaning, your discomfort with shallow living. These traits may have felt like weaknesses early in life, but they were clues. Depth attracts pressure. Sensitivity attracts misunderstanding. Vision attracts resistance. The very qualities that made life harder were signs of what you were carrying. This is why some of the most gifted individuals experience the most inner battles before outward breakthroughs. The war is not over what you've done, it's over what you could do once awakened. Darkness does not fear activity, it fears alignment. A busy but unaware person is not a threat. A focused and awakened one is unstoppable. So the goal becomes delay, not denial. Keep you circling, keep you distracted, keep you doubting, keep you preparing without ever arriving. You may have noticed that whenever you start to move toward growth, something rises to challenge you, not always dramatically, sometimes quietly. Fatigue, overthinking, sudden distractions, unnecessary conflicts, or a voice saying, "Wait a little longer." This is because darkness tracks momentum. It senses when alignment is close. The closer you move to clarity, the louder the resistance becomes. That resistance is not evidence that you are wrong. It is often proof that you are near something right. Chosen ones often experience cycles where just as confidence begins to rise, a setback appears. Just as vision sharpens, confusion tries to return. These cycles are not random. They are attempts to reset you back to an earlier version of yourself. Darkness prefers the version of you that doubts, delays, and depends on external validation. It is uncomfortable with the version of you that knows, decides, and moves with quiet authority. There is also a reason why many chosen ones feel isolated even in crowds. Isolation is not always physical, it can be emotional or mental. You can be surrounded and still feel unseen. This happens because destiny often separates before it elevates, but darkness uses this separation to whisper lies, telling you that you are alone because you are flawed, not because you are being refined. The truth is, isolation often begins when destiny is recognized, not when it is lost. Another pattern is early responsibility paired with delayed reward. You give more, care more, carry more, yet receive less acknowledgement. This is not because life is unfair. It is because your training is internal before it becomes external. Darkness hopes that fatigue will make you quit before reward appears, but it underestimates one thing: endurance forged through awareness becomes unbreakable. When you understand that darkness recognized your destiny early, you stop personalizing the pressure. You stop asking, "What's wrong with me?" and start asking, "What is being protected from emerging?" This shift changes everything. Pressure stops feeling like proof of failure and starts feeling like evidence of value. Resistance becomes information, not intimidation. Awareness dismantles fear. Once you see the pattern, it loses power. You realize that the battles you faced were never about your past, they were about your future. The opposition you encountered was not meant to destroy you, but to distract you from discovering yourself. And now that you are aware, the strategy changes. Darkness retreats when light understands itself. You are not late. You are not broken. You were being watched before you were awakened. And now that you see, the same force that tried to keep you unaware has lost its advantage. Because destiny, once recognized by its owner, moves with speed, precision, and unstoppable authority. Repeated resistance is often proof of uncommon potential, even though at first glance it feels like evidence that something is wrong with you or your path. When obstacles appear again and again, the natural human reaction is to assume misalignment, failure, or personal limitation. But for the chosen, repetition is rarely accidental. Patterns of resistance reveal patterns of value. Nothing valuable is left unchallenged. Nothing powerful is left untested. And nothing carrying influence is allowed to grow without pressure shaping it. If your life has felt like one challenge follows another, not because of reckless choices, but even when you tried to do the right thing, this is a sign worth understanding. Resistance that appears without clear cause is often assigned, not accidental. It is targeted. It is strategic. Darkness does not invest energy where there is no return. The reason opposition seems persistent is because your potential is persistent. The resistance keeps returning because what you carry keeps surviving. Many chosen ones become tired not because they are weak, but because they are strong for too long without explanation. They endure silently, adapt quickly, and recover repeatedly. Darkness counts on this strength turning into exhaustion. The goal is not always to break you in one moment, but to wear you down over time until you question whether continuing is worth it. But what it fails to realize is that endurance is not just survival, it is training. Repeated resistance builds a specific kind of strength that ease can never produce. It sharpens discernment, it deepens wisdom, it strengthens inner authority. You learn to read situations faster, you sense danger earlier, you adapt without losing direction. These are not accidental developments, they are responses to ongoing pressure. Pressure does not just oppose, it prepares. What feels like obstruction is often instruction in disguise. Notice how each wave of resistance forced you to grow in ways comfort never would. You learned patience because rushing didn't work. You developed resilience because quitting wasn't an option. You gained emotional intelligence because misunderstanding followed you. You learned self-reliance because support was inconsistent. These are not weaknesses, they are qualifications. Darkness, unintentionally, has been shaping the very qualities that will later distinguish you. There is also a deeper layer to repeated resistance. It is meant to create self-doubt through familiarity. When something happens once, you question the situation. When it happens twice, you question the timing. When it happens repeatedly, you start questioning yourself. That is the trap. Darkness hopes repetition will convince you that struggle is your identity rather than your training ground. But repetition is not rejection, it is refinement. Chosen ones often face resistance at every level of growth. When you grow emotionally, relationships test you. When you grow mentally, confusion challenges you. When you grow spiritually, isolation follows. When you grow practically, systems resist you. Each layer of growth attracts a new layer of opposition. This is not because growth is wrong, it is because growth is visible. Darkness does not respond to intention, it responds to movement. This is why stagnation can feel peaceful for a season. When you stop growing, resistance quiets down. The attacks reduce, the pressure eases, and many people mistake this silence for alignment. But the absence of resistance is not always a sign of approval. Sometimes it is a sign of disengagement. Darkness rests when you stop progressing. Pressure returns when you begin again. Repeated resistance also teaches timing. It forces you to learn when to push and when to wait, when to speak and when to remain silent, when to act and when to observe. These skills cannot be learned in a smooth journey. They are developed in cycles of attempt and adjustment. The chosen are not rushed into greatness, they are seasoned into it. Another reason resistance repeats is because your influence will eventually affect others. Anything that multiplies draws opposition early. Your breakthrough is not meant to end with you. It will inspire, awaken, or empower others. Darkness recognizes this ripple effect and attempts to stop the source before the wave forms. That is why the pressure often feels disproportionate to your current position. You are being treated according to where you are going, not where you are standing. It is important to understand that repeated resistance does not mean repeated failure. Many of your so-called setbacks were actually redirections. What didn't work protected you from what wouldn't last. What delayed you matured you. What disappointed you refined your discernment. Looking back, you can often see that the resistance saved you from shortcuts that would have cost you later. One of the most damaging lies repeated resistance tries to plant is the belief that ease belongs to others and struggle belongs to you. Comparison becomes dangerous here. You see others advancing while you seem stuck, and you wonder if you missed something or did something wrong. But ease and progress are not always the same. Some paths look smooth because they are shallow. Depth requires excavation, and excavation is noisy, slow, and uncomfortable. Repeated resistance also exposes intention. It reveals how badly you want what you are pursuing. Superficial desire collapses under pressure. Deep calling intensifies. Each time you stand back up, you prove to yourself that this is not a hobby, it is an assignment. and that realization alone strengthens resolve in a way motivation never could. As awareness grows, resistance loses its ability to confuse. You stop interpreting obstacles as stop signs and start seeing them as checkpoints. You learn to ask better questions, not "why is this happening to me?" but "what is this shaping in me?" That shift changes the emotional weight of resistance. It becomes information instead of intimidation. There will come a point where the same resistance that once slowed you will no longer work. You respond differently, you recover faster, you see sooner. That is when darkness adjusts its strategy, not because it has won, but because it has lost leverage. Growth has occurred. Repeated resistance was never meant to define you. It was meant to develop you. And once development is complete, resistance can no longer delay what is ready. What remains is a person who knows their strength, understands their value, and moves forward without needing constant reassurance. Your persistence is not accidental. Your survival is not luck. The fact that you are still moving, still believing, still searching for clarity after everything you have faced is proof that uncommon potential has always been present. And resistance, no matter how often it appeared, has only confirmed that truth. Confusion is one of the most effective strategies used to delay awakened minds, because a confused person hesitates even when the path is open. Unlike fear, which can sometimes be confronted, confusion paralyzes quietly. It blurs direction, weakens confidence, and causes a person to doubt their own judgment. For the chosen, confusion is rarely accidental. It often appears at the very moment clarity is about to form, as if something is trying to interrupt the birth of understanding before it becomes action. You may have noticed this pattern in your own life. Just when you begin to feel certain, just when things start to make sense, uncertainty rushes in, thoughts become scattered, emotions feel mixed, options multiply instead of narrowing. This is not because you are incapable of making decisions, it is because your decisions matter. Confusion is deployed when clarity would create momentum. If clarity leads to movement, and movement leads to alignment, then confusion becomes the easiest way to keep you still. Awakened minds are dangerous to darkness not because they know everything, but because they trust what they know. Once you begin to listen to your inner understanding, you stop relying solely on external validation, and that independence is powerful. Confusion works to sever that trust. It causes you to second-guess your instincts, question your progress, and hesitate at crucial moments. Over time, hesitation becomes a habit, and potential remains unexpressed not because it is lacking, but because it is delayed. Confusion often disguises itself as overthinking. The mind runs in circles, revisiting the same questions without resolution. This is not deep thinking, it is mental noise. Darkness does not need to give you wrong answers if it can keep you asking the same questions endlessly. When the mind is overloaded, the heart's clarity becomes harder to hear. The chosen often mistake this for being thoughtful or careful, not realizing that excessive analysis can be a form of avoidance induced by confusion. Another way confusion operates is by presenting too many options at once. Instead of one clear next step, you are confronted with multiple possibilities, each carrying equal emotional weight. The result is stagnation. You wait for certainty instead of choosing progress, but certainty is rarely given in advance. It is revealed through movement. Confusion knows this and therefore works to make stillness feel safer than action. Confusion also thrives in environments where information is inconsistent. Mixed messages from people, conflicting advice, and contradictory experiences can leave you unsure of whom to trust. For chosen ones, this is intentional. If everyone around you agrees, alignment happens quickly, but when voices clash, discernment is required. Darkness hopes you will either follow the loudest voice or withdraw completely. Both outcomes delay alignment. There is a subtle emotional cost to prolonged confusion. It drains energy without visible struggle. You feel tired without having moved. You feel overwhelmed without having acted. This exhaustion makes rest seem necessary when what is actually needed is clarity. Over time, confusion can masquerade as burnout, causing you to step back at the very moment you should be stepping forward. Confusion also distorts timing. It makes you feel either too early or too late. You tell yourself it's not the right moment, that you need more preparation, more confirmation, more assurance. While wisdom values timing, confusion exaggerates delay. It keeps you preparing for a future moment that never arrives. Darkness prefers you to be perpetually, almost ready, rather than fully engaged. One of the most damaging effects of confusion is its impact on identity. When you are unclear about direction, you begin to question your purpose. When purpose is questioned, confidence weakens, and when confidence weakens, influence diminishes. This is why confusion often targets identity before it targets action. If you are unsure of who you are, every decision feels heavy, every step feels risky, every failure feels personal. Confusion can also arise through emotional entanglements. Unresolved relationships, lingering disappointments, and unspoken expectations create inner noise. For the chosen, emotional clarity is essential because their work requires focus. Darkness uses emotional clutter to pull attention backward, keeping you tied to what was instead of moving toward what is forming. Letting go becomes difficult when confusion keeps reminding you of unfinished emotional business. Yet confusion has a weakness. It cannot survive awareness. The moment you recognize confusion as a strategy rather than a personal flaw, its power begins to fade. You stop blaming yourself for not feeling certain and start observing what is causing the uncertainty. This shift creates space for discernment. Instead of reacting emotionally, you begin to respond intentionally. Clarity does not always come as a loud revelation. Often it arrives as a quiet sense of direction. It is the calm knowing beneath the noise. Darkness fears this calm more than it fears passion, because calm clarity leads to consistent action. Once you learn to move with imperfect understanding, confusion loses its grip. Action cuts through mental fog. Another important realization is that confusion often precedes a breakthrough. When old frameworks no longer fit and new ones have not yet fully formed, disorientation is natural. Darkness exploits this transitional phase, hoping you will retreat instead of pushing through. But this space between what was and what will be is where growth accelerates. Staying present in confusion without surrendering to it is a mark of maturity. As you grow, your tolerance for confusion changes. What once overwhelmed you now simply signals that you are stretching beyond previous limits. You begin to trust your ability to adjust rather than needing everything to be clear in advance. This trust is a sign of awakening. It shifts the balance of power. Darkness loses influence when you move without needing perfect clarity. Confusion was never meant to stop you. It was meant to test your reliance. Will you rely on fear or on inner knowing? Will you wait for certainty or will you act with faith-informed wisdom? Each time you choose movement over paralysis, confusion weakens, and each step forward strengthens alignment. In the end, confusion reveals its true purpose. It exposes where you are still learning to trust yourself. And once that trust is established, confusion no longer delays you. It simply signals that a new level of understanding is being formed. Isolation is often designed to weaken confidence, not character, and that distinction is critical for the chosen to understand. Character grows stronger in solitude, but confidence can quietly erode when isolation is misunderstood. When connection is limited, affirmation is scarce, and understanding feels absent, the mind begins to question what the heart already knows. Darkness exploits this gap, not by attacking your values, but by whispering doubts about your worth, relevance, and impact. Many chosen ones experience isolation long before they experience recognition. They feel different in conversations, disconnected in groups, and unseen even among familiar faces. This is not because they lack social ability or emotional depth. It is because their inner world is expanding faster than their outer environment can accommodate. Isolation becomes a byproduct of growth, but darkness reframes it as rejection. If it can convince you that you are alone because you are unworthy, your confidence weakens even while your character strengthens. Isolation also removes mirrors. When people are absent, feedback disappears, and without feedback, self-perception becomes vulnerable. Darkness uses this space to distort self-image, amplifying flaws and minimizing strengths. You begin to replay conversations, question decisions, and assume negative interpretations without evidence. The absence of voices becomes a canvas for doubt. There is a reason isolation often follows moments of insight or growth. After clarity emerges, separation frequently increases. This is not punishment, it is preparation. But darkness works quickly to turn preparation into pain. It encourages you to interpret separation as abandonment rather than alignment. The truth is, some connections cannot follow you into deeper awareness. But when this truth is not understood, loneliness sets in, and loneliness becomes a breeding ground for self-doubt. Isolation also slows momentum by removing encouragement. Encouragement is fuel. When it is absent, even strong individuals can feel depleted. Darkness knows that confidence thrives in connection, so it targets connection first, not always through dramatic loss, but through gradual distance. Conversations fade, invitations decrease, familiar support systems weaken. The chosen may not notice immediately, but over time, the emotional cost accumulates. Another layer of isolation is misunderstood intensity. Chosen ones often carry depth, focus, and urgency that others do not share. This can make casual interaction feel unsatisfying and meaningful connection rare. Darkness uses this difference to create internal conflict. Either dilute your intensity to belong or embrace isolation to remain authentic. Neither choice feels complete, and the tension can exhaust confidence. The goal is not to force a decision, but to create discomfort. Isolation also magnifies inner dialogue. Without external grounding, thoughts grow louder, memories resurface, regrets echo, fears replay. Darkness fills the silence with noise, hoping you will mistake inner chatter for truth. Over time, this can create a sense of emotional instability, even in those who are mentally strong. The issue is not weakness, it is exposure without balance. However, isolation has a hidden purpose that darkness cannot eliminate. Solitude creates intimacy with self. It sharpens self-awareness. It reveals patterns that were previously masked by distraction. Character is forged here. Values are clarified. Vision deepens. The problem arises when isolation is not balanced with meaning. Without purpose, solitude becomes loneliness. With purpose, it becomes power. Darkness tries to stretch isolation beyond its useful season. Temporary solitude refines, but prolonged isolation can drain. The chosen must recognize when isolation has shifted from preparation to pressure. Awareness restores balance. You begin to seek connection intentionally, not desperately. You stop waiting to be chosen and start choosing alignment. Isolation also tests self-validation. When applause is absent, do you still believe in your path? When no one notices progress, do you still commit to growth? Darkness hopes the answer becomes no. It wants confidence to depend on recognition, but true authority grows when validation comes from within. Isolation forces this development. There is also a strategic reason isolation targets confidence rather than character. A person with strong character but weak confidence will hesitate to act. They will overprepare. They will delay. They will wait for permission that never comes. Darkness prefers you morally strong but operationally inactive. Isolation supports this outcome by nurturing self-doubt while leaving values intact. As awareness increases, isolation changes form. It no longer feels like abandonment, it feels like focus. You begin to understand that not everyone is meant to walk every stage with you. You stop chasing connection that compromises clarity. Confidence begins to rebuild, not from applause, but from alignment. Another shift occurs when you recognize that isolation is not permanent. It is seasonal. It comes and goes in waves. Each wave reveals something new. Each return to connection feels richer because you know yourself better. Darkness loses power when you stop interpreting isolation as evidence against you and start seeing it as evidence of transition. Ultimately, isolation cannot destroy confidence once purpose is clear. The moment you understand why you are alone, loneliness transforms into strength. You move differently. You speak with quiet certainty. You no longer need to be surrounded to feel supported. And when connection returns, it aligns with who you have become, not who you were. Isolation was never meant to define you. It was meant to refine you. Darkness tried to use it to weaken your confidence, but in the process, it strengthened your character. And when confidence finally catches up to character, isolation loses its leverage entirely. Awareness breaks patterns that prayer alone cannot expose, and this truth challenges many assumptions about growth, faith, and transformation. Prayer is powerful, but awareness determines direction. Without awareness, even sincere prayer can become repetitive, asking for relief without understanding the root, seeking change without recognizing the pattern. Darkness is not threatened by prayer that lacks perception. It is threatened when light sees clearly. Once a pattern is exposed, it can no longer operate in secrecy, and secrecy is where its strength lies. Many chosen ones pray faithfully, yet remain stuck in cycles they cannot explain. The same issues resurface. The same emotional reactions repeat. The same types of resistance appear at different stages of life. This does not mean prayer is ineffective. It means awareness has not yet been activated. Prayer invites power, but awareness tells power where to move. When you can name a pattern, you begin to regain authority over it. Patterns are rarely dramatic. They are subtle, habitual, and familiar. Darkness relies on familiarity because familiarity feels normal. You stop questioning what repeats. You accept cycles as personality traits, fate, or circumstances. Awareness disrupts this comfort. It forces observation. It asks, "Why does this keep happening?" without immediately assigning blame. That question alone weakens the pattern. One of the most common patterns among chosen ones is emotional looping. You recover, grow, and then unexpectedly return to the same emotional state under different conditions. Awareness reveals that the trigger is not the event, but an unresolved belief. Without awareness, prayer asks for peace. With awareness, you address the belief that keeps disturbing peace. This is where transformation accelerates. Another pattern is reactive behavior. You respond the same way under pressure, regardless of context. Awareness allows you to pause between trigger and response. That pause is powerful. Darkness loses control when reaction becomes choice. Prayer strengthens the will, but awareness trains the mind to use it wisely. Awareness also exposes internal agreements, beliefs you unknowingly accepted. Statements like "this is just how life is," or "this always happens to me," seem harmless, but they reinforce patterns. Prayer may ask for change, while these agreements quietly cancel it. Awareness identifies these contradictions and restores alignment between desire and belief. There is also the pattern of overresponsibility. Many chosen ones carry burdens that are not theirs. They feel responsible for others, emotions, outcomes, or healing. Awareness reveals where compassion crosses into self-neglect. Without awareness, prayer asks for strength. With awareness, you learn boundaries. Boundaries protect energy, and protected energy sustains purpose. Darkness resists awareness because awareness removes predictability. Patterns rely on predictability to function. Once you see the pattern, you stop responding automatically. You disrupt timing. You alter behavior. The pattern no longer knows how to operate. This is why awareness often brings discomfort before freedom. Seeing clearly requires confronting habits, beliefs, and emotions you once avoided. Awareness also changes how you interpret setbacks. Instead of seeing them as failure, you begin to see them as signals. What is being repeated? What is being avoided? What is being reinforced? This interpretation turns experience into data. Growth accelerates when experience is studied rather than endured. Another crucial aspect of awareness is self-honesty. Patterns survive where honesty is compromised. Darkness does not need you to lie to others. It only needs you to lie to yourself. Awareness removes this protection. It demands truth without judgment. You stop pretending you don't see what you see. That honesty restores authority. Awareness also sharpens discernment. You begin to recognize patterns in people, environments, and opportunities. You stop entering cycles that drain you. You stop repeating conversations that lead nowhere. You choose differently, not because you are harder, but because you are clearer. Importantly, awareness does not replace prayer, it completes it. Prayer aligns you with higher wisdom, and awareness helps you interpret what that wisdom reveals. Together, they form a feedback loop. You pray, you observe, you adjust. Each cycle deepens effectiveness. As awareness grows, patterns lose emotional charge. What once triggered intense reactions now feels manageable. This emotional neutrality is not indifference. It is mastery. Darkness loses leverage when emotion no longer dictates action. Awareness also fosters responsibility without blame. You recognize your role in patterns without condemning yourself. This balanced perspective is empowering. It allows change without shame. Darkness thrives on shame because shame paralyzes. Awareness dissolves shame by replacing it with understanding. There is a moment when awareness reaches critical mass. You see the pattern clearly enough that you can no longer participate unconsciously. That moment marks the end of the cycle. The pattern may attempt to reassert itself, but it no longer controls behavior. Choice has been restored. Ultimately, awareness is the bridge between intention and transformation. It turns prayer into strategy. It turns experience into wisdom. It turns cycles into lessons. Darkness cannot survive where awareness is sustained, because awareness brings light, and light reorganizes everything it touches. Once you become aware, you are no longer fighting blindly. You are no longer repeating unknowingly. You are no longer hopping for change without understanding. You are moving with insight, intention, and authority, and that is where patterns end. This message is your awakening, not your warning. What you faced was never random. It was intentional resistance against intentional purpose. Once you see the pattern, darkness loses its grip. Awareness restores authority. Clarity fuels movement. And what tried to delay you now confirms that you were chosen all along.